Anybody here seen my old friend Abraham? Can you tell me where he's gone? He freed a lot of people, but it seemed good they die young. You know, I just looked around and he's gone. Anybody here seen my old friend John? Can you tell me where he's gone? He freed a lot of people, but it seemed good they die young. I just looked around and he's gone.
Hello. I'm confident, as I look to the future, that our chances for security, our chances for peace, are better than they've been in the past. And the reason is because we're stronger. And with that strength is a determination.
Here's our emergency. I was wondering if you could throw something quickly on the president.
I can't tell you. All the Dallas police have reported that the suspect in the shooting of the president in Dallas just a few minutes ago is believed to be trapped in an old building near the triple underpass in Dallas, near where the shooting occurred. Police are certain that they will have the man under arrest in the next few minutes. He has not been apprehended yet. He's described as a white man, about 160 pounds, about 6 feet tall. That's all we know at this time. This is Charles Murphy reporting from WPOP, Fort Worth.
Both he and the governor in critical condition.
A 24-year-old man who said 2 years ago he wanted Russian citizenship was questioned today to see whether he had any connection with the assassination of President Kennedy. He is identified as Lee Harvey Oswald of Fort Worth. He was screaming and yelling from the Texas Theater in the Oak Cliff section of Dallas shortly after a Dallas policeman was shot to death. On the 1st of November in 1959, Oswald told the U.S. Embassy in Moscow he had applied for Soviet citizenship. That he had been a tourist in Russia since October 13th that year.
The tragedy of this day is beyond instant comprehension. All of us who knew him will bear the grief of his death to the day of ours. And all men everywhere who love peace and justice and freedom will bow their heads. At such a moment, we can only turn to prayer. Prayer to comfort our grief, to sustain Mrs. Kennedy and his family, to strengthen President Johnson, and to guide us in time to come.
I share the sense of shock and dismay that the entire nation must feel at the despicable act that took the life of the nation's president. On the personal side, Mrs. Eisenhower and I share the grief Mrs. Kennedy must now feel.
And I can assure all of you here who have reposed this confidence in me that I will be worthy of your trust. We will carry the fight to the people in the fall, and we shall win.
This is a sad time for all people. We have suffered a loss that cannot be weighed. For me, it is a deep personal tragedy. I know that the world shares the sorrow that Mrs. Kennedy and her family bear. I will do my best. That is all I can do. I ask for your help and God's.
Abraham Lincoln said in the election of 1860 that this nation cannot exist half slave and half free. I don't think in the long run
the world can exist, half slave and half free. And whether it moves in the direction of slavery, whether it moves in the direction of the communists, or whether it moves in the direction of freedom, will depend in the final analysis upon us, upon our vigor, upon our energy, upon our determination. And on that basis, on our commitment to build a strong country in a free world, I come to New York City on the steps of this old City Hall and ask your support.
Tell us exactly what you saw, sir.
He was coming down the street, and my 5-year-old boy and myself were by ourselves on the grass there on Commerce Street, and I asked Joe to wave to him, and Joe waved, and I waved, and the man...
That's all right, sir.
You go ahead and tell it. As he was waving back, the shot rang out, and he slumped down in the seat, and his wife reached up toward him, and as he was slumping down, and the second shot went off, and it just knocked him down from the seat.
Two shots?
Two shots.
Did you see the man who did the...
No, sir, I did not see the man who did it. All I did was look in the man's face when he was shot there and saw that expression on his face and grab himself and slide. And the second one, whenever it went, why, I'm positive it had hit him. I hope it didn't, but I'm positive that it hit him, and he went all the way down in the car. Then they speeded up, and I didn't know what was going on, so I just grabbed the boy and fell on him in the hopes that there wasn't a maniac around. I'm sorry. I can't help you more, but I won't forget it.
From this time and place to friend and foe alike, that the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century, tempered by war, disciplined by a hard and bitter peace, proud of our ancient heritage, and unwilling to witness or permit the slow undoing of those human rights to which this nation has always been committed.
You may talk about your Clementine and sing of Rosalie, but the yellow rose of Texas is the only girl for me.
At such a moment, we can only turn to prayer. Prayer to comfort our grief, to sustain Mrs. Kennedy and his family, to strengthen President Johnson, and to guide us in time to come. May God help us.
Exactly what you saw, sir.
He was coming down the street, and my 5-year-old boy and myself were by ourselves on the grass there on Commerce Street, and I asked Joe to wave to him, and Joe waved, and I waved, and the man...
That's all right, sir.
You go ahead and tell it. As he was waving back, he was the shot rang out, and he slumped down in the seat, and his wife reached up toward him, and they were slumping down, and the second shot went off, and it just knocked him down in the seat. Two shots. Did you see the man who did it? No, sir, I did not see the man who did it. All I did was look in the man's face when he was shot there and saw that expression on his face.
You have one man, do you not, yes, Captain?
Yes, I didn't see it, so we've got the man I think did it.
Here he comes. Here's Oswald again. He is now lying very pale on a stretcher.
This nation is opposed to war.
Parkland Hospital, the irony of ironies, the place where President John F. Kennedy died. The armored car now has been cleared out of the entranceway.
It might be said now that I have the best of both worlds, a Harvard education and a Yale degree. I am particularly glad to become a Yale man because as I think about my troubles, I find that a lot of them have come from other Yale men.
Dallas police say they do have a man in custody. They believe he is the man who walked up to Lee Oswald at point-blank range and fired a revolver into his stomach.
To halt this offensive buildup, a strict quarantine on all offensive military equipment under shipment to Cuba is being initiated.
Oswald grabbed at his midsection, fell to the floor. Now you can see the pandemonium that once again has broken loose.
We got a man that I believe I didn't see it. I think it's the man.
All ships of any kind bound for Cuba, from whatever nation or port, where they're found to contain cargoes of offensive weapons, be turned back.
You got him? What's he look like?
I can't give you a description now. He is known locally.
He's known locally?
Simultaneous and identical actions of United States Steel and other leading steel corporations increasing steel prices by some $6 a ton constitute a wholly unjustifiable and irresponsible defiance of the public interest. In this serious hour in our nation's history, when we are confronted with grave crises in Berlin and Southeast Asia, when we are devoting our energies to economic recovery and stability, when we are asking reservists to leave their homes and families for months on end, and servicemen to risk their lives, and 4 were killed in the last 2 days in Vietnam.
The sudden and arbitrary action of the officers of this organization in increasing the price of dinner tickets by $2.50 over last year constitutes a wholly unjustifiable defiance of the public interest. If this increase is not rescinded, but is imitated by the gridiron, radio, TV, and other dinners, it will have a serious impact on the entire economy of this city. In this serious hour in our nation's history, when newsmen are awakened in the middle of the night to be given a front-page story when expense accounts are being scrutinized by the Congress, when correspondents are required to leave their families for long and lonely weekends at Palm Beach, the American people will find it hard to accept this ruthless decision made by a tiny handful of executives.
Dallas homicide officers into the basement of the city hall. A man who's been identified as Jack Ruby, the owner of two nightclubs showing striptease acts, has been apprehended. He is alleged to be the man who shot Oswald. Oswald has been taken to Parkland Hospital, which is the county hospital in Dallas. As of this time, there is no indication what his condition is. It is known, however, that he was shot once in the stomach from about 6 inches away. This is Vic Robertson in Dallas.
Anything on Jack Ruby?
Hasn't said a thing. There's no question about it. He's well known. The police department has what they call buku witnesses.
I see value in talking to those with whom we're allies, but I also think it valuable at a time when both sides possess weapons of mutual destruction and annihilation. I think it's also valuable that there should be understanding and communication and a firm realization of what we believe. So I go see Mr. Khrushchev in Vienna.
In his telegram to Mrs. Jacqueline Kennedy, Nikita Khrushchev writes, "It is with a feeling of deep personal sorrow that I learned of the tragic death of your husband, John Kennedy, President of the United States. All who knew him respected him, and my memories of the meetings with him will always remain with me. Please accept my most sincere condolences and greatest sympathies in your grief."
I carry with me a message which is written on one of our statues by a distinguished and vigorous New Englander, William Lloyd Garrison. I am in earnest. I will not equivocate. I will not excuse. I will not retreat a single inch, and I will be heard.
This is a sad time for all people.
Dag Hammarskjöld is dead.
For me, it is a deep personal tragedy.
Life in 1961 will not be easy.
I will do my best. That is all I can do. I ask for your help and God's.
The guiding principle and prayer of this nation has been, is now, and shall ever be, in God we trust.
We have a long way to go in the space race. We started late, but this is the new ocean, and I believe the United States must sail on it and be in a position second to none.
17 years ago today, a group of Marines put the American flag on Mount Suribachi. So it's very appropriate that today we decorate Colonel Glenn of the United States Marine Corps, and also realize that in the not-too-distant future, a Marine or a naval man or an Air Force man will put the American flag on the moon.
I've come to Texas today to salute an outstanding group of pioneers.
Next month, when the United States of America fires the largest booster in the history of the world into space, fires the largest payload into space, giving us the lead. It will be the largest payroll, too. Who should know that better than Houston? 1990. Your sons, daughters, grandsons, and grandchildren will be applying for the colleges of this state.
The shot rang out, and he slumped down in the seat, and his wife reached up toward him, and as he was slumping down, and the second shot went off, and it just knocked him down from the seat.
I'm standing by the Custis Lee Mansion. Below lies the open grave of President John F. Kennedy. At its foot, an eternal light set aflame during the interment ceremony by Mrs. Kennedy burned strongly. Evergreen boughs surround the flame. Most of the thousands of mourners are now gone. I've just talked to Cemetery Superintendent John Metzler, who says this is the saddest ceremony he ever remembers at Arlington.
50
62-year-old Jack Ruby is in the top floor of the Dallas County Courthouse in an individual cell, still charged with the murder of Lee Harvey Oswald. Yesterday, Oswald was buried under strict security measures with police guarding a crowd of curious onlookers. So few guests at the funeral that the pallbearers were 2 Secret Service men and 4 newsmen. Only the widow of Harvey Oswald, his 2 children, his brother, and his mother were present at the funeral, and a mysterious couple came into the funeral home to sign the register, then left before the funeral. Thus ends another chapter in the violence which racked Dallas over the weekend. Jack Ruby is in jail, awaiting a bond hearing sometime later this week and a trial perhaps in mid-January.
A Dallas minister who said 4th graders cheered when President Kennedy had been assassinated is now under protection. H.G. Williams said an announcement was read over the public address system of the school in Dallas telling the youngsters to go home immediately, but there was no mention of the president's death. Williams said the students may have cheered at the announcement to go home. The school principal in Dallas has denied charges that the 4th graders cheered when they heard President Kennedy had been assassinated. Police are now guarding the home of the Reverend Holmes, who made the accusation on television last night.
Dallas District Attorney Henry Wade says he doubts nightclub owner Jack Ruby's explanation for killing Lee Oswald, the man accused of killing President Kennedy. Ruby told police he did because he felt sorry for Mrs. Kennedy and her children. He didn't want Mrs. Kennedy to have to come to Dallas for a trial. District Attorney Wade refused to accept that story and said it may have been a desire for publicity, or it may have involved something far deeper. We intend to probe into it and seek the death penalty.
All I have, I would have given gladly not to be standing here today. The greatest leader of our time has been struck down by the foulest deed of our time. Today, John Fitzgerald Kennedy lives on in the immortal words and works that he left behind. He lives on in the mind and memories of mankind. He lives on in the hearts of his countrymen. No words are sad enough to express our sense of loss. No words are strong enough to express our determination to continue the forward thrust of America that he began. Under John Kennedy's leadership, this nation has demonstrated that it has the courage to seek peace, and it has the fortitude to risk war. We have proved that we are a good and reliable friend to those who seek peace and freedom. We have shown that we can also be a formidable foe to those who reject the path of peace,
We shall not always expect to find
and
them
those who seek to impose upon us or our
we shall
allies
always hope to find
the
them
yoke of tyranny.
strongly supporting their own freedom.
This
Finally,
nation will keep its
For
commitment
those nations who
from
would make
South Vietnam
themselves
to
our
West
adversaries,
Berlin.
we offer not a pledge, but a request that both sides begin anew the quest for peace. Remembering on both sides that civility is not a sign of weakness, and sincerity is always subject to proof. Let us never negotiate out of fear, but let us never fear to negotiate. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you...
Anybody
anybody here seen my old friend John? Can you tell me where he's gone?